Hey everybody, welcome back to theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Again, it's theclinicaltrialsguru.com or more simply, theclinicaltrials.guru. And I want to get to all of your questions today. You guys have sent a lot of questions this past week, as usual, and I'll keep you guys anonymous. A lot of good topics actually for today, and I want to get right into it. Okay, so the first topic is going to be about how does risk-based monitoring affect monthly payments? So one of the trends lately has been risk-based monitoring and how a lot of the CROs and sponsors are using and starting to implement risk-based monitoring in order to, for many reasons, make the trial more efficient from their end, at least from their perspective. The idea is to focus on the parts of the study where a lot of errors happen or there are a lot of safety issues, so that way they can focus their resources on particular data points or just parts of the study as opposed to just kind of covering the entire study like traditional monitoring would do. And this is all fine and dandy, but the problem is, and I got a very good question, the problem comes from the research clinics. And of course, the CROs and sponsors, they implement these things without really keeping the research clinics in mind, specifically and especially without keeping our cash flow in mind. So if you negotiate a contract with monthly payments, which everyone should, okay? I don't think you should accept quarterly payments at all under any circumstance, because quarterly payments, as we all know, actually mean semi-annually, so two payments a year. And monthly payments, which is what we should all aim for, really mean every other month. But I digress. You should negotiate monthly payments for all your studies, okay? But how does risk-based monitoring affect these monthly payments if the monitors don't come in on a monthly basis? And so there's been a lot of confusion, and there still is because each protocol is slightly different as far as what triggers a payment. And I have yet to be able to figure out exactly what triggers a payment for research clinics. Is it when a monitor source verifies and reviews the data at the clinic? Or is it when the data is entered in EDC? Or is it when data has been entered in EDC and source verified by the monitor and no queries are going to be issued, meaning it's been frozen? So there's a lot of different scenarios under which I've received payments. None of them, unfortunately, are consistent. There is no standard. But the question, and it's a good one, is what happens? How can risk-based monitoring affect our monthly payments? I don't think it should, but again, because there's no standard and because a lot of the CROs, and these are big organizations, and sponsors are still learning how to deal with these things, you may see some glitches in the payments. I know for some studies, we negotiated monthly payments, and especially early on in the study, we actually don't receive a payment till 6 months after we've been screening, which is definitely not what we agreed upon in the contract. But these things do happen, and again, these CROs and sponsors, nothing against them because they have to do what they got to do. It's a competitive market out there, as we'll get into in the next topic. It's really competitive right now amongst the CROs. They're trying to cut costs, they're trying to make the studies more efficient, they're trying to provide clean, good data, reliable data for their sponsors. And there's a lot of things that CROs and sponsors are considering when it comes to risk-based monitoring. And risk-based monitoring sounds really good on paper, basically focusing the resources on specific areas intelligently rather than just kind of spreading across all the resources across the entire study where it may not necessarily be needed. But the one thing they possibly did not consider is how this will affect study site payments. And again, I think you guys should keep an eye on this if you're in charge of contracts and budgets and accounts receivables at your clinic. You should definitely keep an eye on this, um, because I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if we start seeing a lot of errors or payment delays when it comes to these kind of things. You got to remember we're dealing with huge organizations that are implementing something that's pretty innovative when it comes to risk-based monitoring. I mean, they're using technology to try to make their business processes more efficient, but at the same time, there probably will be some growing pains, and unfortunately, looks like the sites are going to be getting the short end of that stick. Hopefully not. So far, I don't think any of my clinics are necessarily undergoing risk-based monitoring visits. We're still doing the traditional monitoring visits, but I can imagine that by this time next year, so right now it's August 2014, I would not be surprised if by August 2015 we see risk-based monitoring being implemented at half of the sites or more, half of the studies or more that are going on at that time. And this leads us right into the kind of the competitive landscape that we're in right now with CROs. It is really strange right now because there's, number one, not that many studies, and number two, there's a lot of sponsors, a lot of big sponsors doing multiple protocols that are almost identical. So a lot of the protocols that they're doing are almost identical, but the funny thing is they're using two different CROs. So what I believe the sponsors are doing, and from discussions with people in the industry, actually at the sponsor and CRO level, what they've told me is what they're doing, what the sponsors are doing, is using the demand, the shortage of supply for studies to kind of see which CROs can produce more efficient trials for them and more reliable data. So let's take, for example, an asthma study that a sponsor is doing. They may they may create two different protocols that are almost identical. They just changed a few things for each study. So maybe they changed a couple endpoints or they changed a couple of different things that go on in certain visits. And so they give one protocol to one CRO and another one to the other CRO. Each CRO chooses sites. They make sure that they don't choose the same sites that are conducting the other trial, although I've heard some clinics are doing both protocols for two different CROs. So it's really weird. Um, but basically, the sponsor says, all right, let's see which one we like better. Let's see which one we design better. And ultimately, let's see which CRO is better at handling the study and giving us the finished product, which is reliable data, timely data, and which CRO can encourage their sites to enroll the most patients, which CRO can ensure the fewest amount of queries and the fewest amount of glitches and hiccups when it comes to actually executing the study. So, and then what you do see is once the sponsor has kind of, let's say a year has gone by and the study's, well underway, they have enough data, the sponsor does, to kind of look at each CRO and each study and choose which one is better. And usually there's a clear winner and a clear loser. And the reason you'll know this is because the clear loser, the study will end. They will find some reason to stop the study. In one case, I believe they said that there was no efficacy. So they're saying the study drug did not show any promise when compared to placebo. In another study, it may be there was a weird adverse event, like a rash that someone got that covered their entire body. Some of these things are probably excuses. Some of them are probably legitimate. But the point is, they will completely stop one study and then go all in on the one that's working or the one that they like or the one that they think is more efficient, whatever it is that they're looking for. And that's the CRO that they're going to use for their other trials. And this has been going on for the past year, at least. I've been hearing things from other sites, from people at sponsors, from people from pharma companies and CROs. This has been going on, and sites, sometimes you get both protocols. Like there are some sites I work with that actually have both protocols. So they're almost, again, these identical protocols. They're just being managed by different CROs. So some sites actually ended up getting both of those studies. Most sites, however, will get one or the other. Um, and if you're one of those sites that gets one or the other, it's kind of a crapshoot as far as whether your site will continue that study. Even if you're doing a really good job and you're making good money and very few queries and you finally figured out how to do the study without any errors or with as few queries as possible, you may just lose the study. There was one example I had where I had a regular study visit, so I was the coordinator in this study. I had a regular study visit going on. When I tried to assign drug for that visit, the IVRS was blocked. They said the IVRS is not accepting any more registration of new IP. So I called the monitor. The monitor had no clue what was going on. They called the project manager. Project manager called the sponsor. It turned out that someone from the sponsor decided in the middle of the night to call IVRS and say, hey, nobody else is going to be registering drug. We're ending the study. And this is the same sponsor who was doing a similar trial, almost identical, with another CRO. And that study is still going on. The study I was working on shut down, no warning at all. And we've been doing this for a year and a half. So it's just part of the game. It's part of what you've got to deal with as a researcher, especially right now where there's very little supply and high demand, meaning there's very few studies out there right now, and a lot of research clinics and CROs willing to do and bid for the opportunity to do a study. I think we'll see less of this as the sponsors start doing more trials, but right now, as we speak in 2014, we're seeing a lot of this, and I think this will continue on until at least early next year, early 2015. And then I'm hoping to see an increase in study volume and probably less competition amongst the CROs, meaning more work for everyone to share, more supply, slightly lower demand. Very similar to real estate, I'm also a realtor, so when you have low inventory of houses on the market, prices should go up and buyers get really competitive amongst themselves. So this is what's going on with the CROs. They're getting very competitive when they make these bids to get studies. And then when there's a lot of supply, a lot of homes on the market, or a lot of studies on the market, competition becomes actually decreased to the point where the sellers, people who are trying to sell their homes, are giving incentives for people to make an offer on the home, or the sponsors are making incentives to get a CRO or a site to do a study. Because on the flip side of this coin, probably back in 2006, 2007, I turned down studies constantly when they were not a right fit for one of my sites or whatever the case may be. And the sponsors would literally almost beg you to take the study. Haven't seen that since then, but I think we should get there at some point again. Everything comes in cycles, whether it's real estate or clinical trials. It comes in cycles, and it's just supply and demand. No matter what industry you're in, it's supply and demand. So anyways, there's a lot of competition going on amongst CROs right now because there's low supply, meaning not that many studies, a lot of CROs, a lot of demand to do these studies. And research clinics are getting caught in the middle of it, and that's always the case. And it's very much tied into the risk-based monitoring and how that affects monthly payments. Got another question. It's about, and it's probably related to the low supply of studies, but I think sponsors are just getting stricter on this issue, and it's duplicate subjects. So, especially in the larger cities, and I've blogged about this early on in the days of the clinical trial guru, like back in 2010, where we found some study participants, and there's actually quite a few, that that do multiple studies at the same time or jump around from research clinic to research clinic in order to get the $50 compensation. So they'll jump around from research clinic to research clinic and end up enrolling in the same studies. And this becomes redundant and wasteful data for the sponsor because it's the same individual joining the same trial. So right now, what the CROs and sponsors are starting to ask in some of these feasibility surveys is what processes do you have in place to prevent duplicate subjects? And at least, I mean, it's very difficult to have a database that you can cross-check with other sites, like cross-reference with other sites. I know the CROs and some sponsors actually do have a database based on patient initials and date of birth of basically who these people are and whether they've done a similar study or the same study at another site. We've had the case a handful of times at one of my clinics where different patients have been actually stopped at the screening stage by the IVRS because it flagged a potential duplicate subject, and this is because of the database that they're using. But now the sponsors and CROs are asking the sites, well, what are you doing about it? How are you being proactive to make sure that it doesn't get through or by us? Because their systems are not perfect either. So there's no real way for you, unless you collaborate with other sites in your area, there's no real way for you to necessarily cross-reference which of your participants have done trial at other sites. You can always ask, but guess what? People lie. It happens a lot. But what you can do is at least have an internal database of your own. And you can use something as simple as an Excel spreadsheet. You don't have to get these fancy softwares that cost like $100 or $300 a month to use. Just get an Excel spreadsheet, get someone who's tech savvy at your clinic to create one, and just have a simple patient database where you can put last name, first name, date of birth, address, phone number, basic things like that, where you can identify who's done what studies at your site. Because when you have a lot of these sponsors, what they're doing is they're working on a particular drug or a particular compound, and they're doing like 10 trials on the same compound. For example, they may try one for bipolar disorder. They may try the same drug for schizophrenia. They may try the same drug for depression, for Alzheimer's. They're just trying to see what indications their particular compound works best on. And that's why they do clinical trials. Well, you don't want to put the same patient in a different study that's testing the same compound. Number one, they've already been exposed to the IP, which is almost always an exclusion criteria in any study. And number two, they don't have the same diagnosis. Their diagnosis can't change every 3 months or so. So you have to have at least your own internal database where you can see which of your patients have done what studies. So when you, especially if you have a big clinic with a lot of patients and a lot of staff members, they may not remember faces or particular patient names. When you're recruiting for another study that's using the same compound of another study that you've done, you don't want to enroll those patients from your old study into the new one, even if it's on accident. Okay, I mean, you probably will get stopped by the IVRS system when you're screening or enrolling the subject, but it doesn't look good on your site. And then they're going to get into your SOPs, which are your standard operating procedures, and they're going to ask you, how do you prevent duplicate subjects from getting in? It's happened to me at some of my sites. We were at the time we were still perfecting our system, our database, but now we have a simple Excel spreadsheet, and we haven't had this issue again. And I had to create an SOP for that and set up the SOP and say, okay, here's what we're doing now to prevent this. We're basically cross-referencing whenever we get a new subject that's interested in a trial. We look in our database and see if they've done a study with us before, and if so, which study. And then we also ask the patient if they've done studies elsewhere. And there, at that point, you can't really control what they tell you because they could lie, but at least you know at your own clinic what each study participant, which study they've done. So you don't enroll duplicate subjects in your own sites unknowingly. All right, so that's that question. So if you need help with the SOPs, let me know. I do consulting as well. I had another question. It says, "Hi Dan, I'm a patient recruiter from my site. I'll keep you anonymous. I was referred to you a while ago by my sister. Recently at our site, we've decided to go with a company called, I won't mention the name. They provide a 22-inch digital screen that can display multiple images and videos. They are a local company close to where our site is located, and they also sell their screens to other doctors' offices and medical facilities. We joined them because they provide a service called advertising networks, where all of the doctor offices that purchase their screen have their own ad, and those ads are displayed on everyone's screen for a 30-minute loop. So our ads for clinical trials will be showed on their digital screens, and their ads will be displayed on ours, kind of like a TV network specifically for doctors' offices. I want to display an ad for one of our lower enrolling studies, Alzheimer's disease. The patient age range is 60 and up, and most of the time these patients will have a caregiver or a loved one that takes care of them. In your experience of recruiting, how should we approach advertising to these type of people? Should we cater it more towards the caregivers? What kind of wording would you suggest? I read your book, How to Recruit Clinical Trial Study Participants, and learned quite a lot. Thank you for reading that. Make sure you leave a review. And for those of you who haven't read it, go check it out. There's a lot of questions here. So I'm going to start with the digital display screen, that you can buy and put in your office and then pay for your ad to be shown on other doctors' offices. This probably will work to some extent, but it's still disruptive advertising, meaning we're now in the age where you need permission marketing. That's how it works. So, for example, a Facebook ad in the middle of someone's stream as they're scrolling down would probably work if the ad is made to look like a post. Okay. Or you interacting with someone on your company's Facebook fan page, and then slowly getting them to join one of your studies. That's more like permission marketing. Or you capturing someone's email on your website because they want more information from you. That's permission marketing. Disruptive marketing is intruding on someone's time. So if I'm watching TV, I hate watching ads. And if you're like most people, you watch TV with one of these things, and as soon as the commercials come on, or hell, even during the show, you're not paying attention all the time. You're going through your phone, checking Twitter, checking Facebook, checking email, checking your bank account, whatever. So when an ad is on the TV, you're very unlikely to pay attention. Now, the question is, you may have a captive audience in a physician's office, but I want you to go to your office and just pay attention to what people are doing in your waiting room. I don't know if you have a TV right now or not. Guarantee you at least half of them are going to be on these things, either playing games or checking email or doing something with their cell phone, with a tablet, talking to somebody else. They're not watching the TV necessarily. They're definitely not going to be watching the ads. With all that being said, I probably still would do this. I probably still would put my ad on one of these advertising networks because you're reaching people at physicians' offices. So if I had an Alzheimer's study, I would run this ad at physician clinics that specialize in seeing geriatric population because you already have the filter. The filtering has kind of been done for you already. So now you're reaching people who are at least more likely to qualify for your trial rather than putting this ad on TV where a 16-year-old kid might be watching and it may be of no interest to him. I would be careful with how much you spend for this kind of stuff. Advertising networks are in denial and they tend to think that it's still 1999 and it's actually 2014. So back in 1999, you would watch commercials. You couldn't skip them. Now you can skip them with DVRs, or you can just not pay attention, which is what I do. I mean, I don't even pay attention to the shows half the time. Or if I'm watching sports, I'm on my phone constantly. I pay attention when I want to. And so I would negotiate really hard with them. Play hardball. Say, look, I'll do this, but I'm not going to pay you what you're asking. I'll give you half, and we'll see how it works. And then experiment with it that way. I'm sure they're going to want to do it. Again, we talked about supply and demand earlier. And I know this is not an economics or business blog, but sometimes I feel like it is because I'm giving so much business advice. Um, negotiate, and pay attention. Go to your waiting room, go to another physician's waiting room, go to several in your area, especially the ones that are going to be targeting people that you're targeting, like Alzheimer's patients. And I'm going to get into your next question right now. Look at what they're doing. Pay attention to what they're doing when they're in the waiting room. I guarantee you that they're not watching the ads and that they're on this thing. So that's what I would do if I were you. I still think there is a place for these kind of networks, because they've already done the filtering for you. But I would negotiate with them and see what kind of deal you can get. If you want me to do this for you, I have a patient recruitment firm, and we can negotiate on your behalf and also do other cool things like Facebook dark posts, which I've talked about earlier, but I'm really heavy, and I could tell that you read my book, huge on social media, and that doesn't mean that traditional advertising is dead, but don't pay what they offer you the first time. Negotiate with them. Okay, and now to get to your second question. So you're targeting people with Alzheimer's disease. Most of the time, I would target their caregivers or their family members. Um, I ran Parkinson's ads in the past. I've run Alzheimer's ads too with success. Google works really good when you target Google ads, work really good when you target their caregivers or their families. Same thing with Parkinson's. Although with Parkinson's, you can still target the patient themselves, but with Alzheimer's, if they have enough cognitive deficits, they're not necessarily going to be able to do a Google search or much less click on an ad. So you're really going to be targeting their family. I'm still a huge believer of Facebook. I think Facebook ads, if done the right way, and my firm does a lot of this. We've helped sites out with a lot of success, and it costs you nothing, by the way. It comes straight out of your advertising budget in your contract, so it costs the site nothing. It's a pass-through item. Let me know if I can help, but yes, I would target the family members, and I believe in Facebook. Twitter ads are going to be interesting for certain demographics, Google ads, and I still believe in traditional media, but at the right price. So that's my long answer to your question. This podcast is going on for a while, so let's get into one more question, and then we are done for today. Ladies and gentlemen, there's one more question, and this is in regards to being a CRA. So, hey Dan, I was applying for jobs, and one of the jobs referred to me as a CRA school where you can become certified. I started doing some research and found your podcast, and I've been a nurse since '95. I recently finished my master's degree, and I've been looking for something new I could do for a career besides nursing. So here's where the question gets kind of funny. Is this CRA something you can do from home on the internet? Yes, most CRAs are home-based, but your work is not just online. You're going to be traveling. And if you talk to most CRAs, they will tell you, at least at the beginning, they have no life whatsoever. They're traveling at least 20, 25 days out of the month to different sites. It's not till later on when you get some seniority in your group that they let you just monitor the local sites in the area, and if you're lucky, you can drive there instead of fly. So yes, you do a lot of work from home and on the internet, but you'll be traveling most of the time. So prepare to have no life at all if you want, if you still want this career. Her other question is, I also qualify to be in marketing and management aspect. Um, However, I'm not sure what that entails. And then she talks about where she's going to be moving, and there's not that many clinics there. So, and yes, you can order my Kindle books on your laptop. You don't need a Kindle reader. You just download the Kindle app for your computer. It's free, and then you can read my books on your laptop if you want. Um, so yeah, that's my response to you, trying to keep it short. You can work from home as a CRA, but be prepared to have no life and travel all the time. And it's a lot of work, but it does pay well. It does pay well. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not rewarding, but I don't want you to think it's something that's easy. Like you're not going to be a network marketer working from home, working like 2 hours a month and making $6,000. That's just not the business you're in. The marketing and management aspect is interesting. Email me more about that so I can try to help you out if I can. And thank you guys for watching. I wanted to give a shout out to my clinical trial guru producers. Okay, that's if you want to be a clinical trial guru producer, it's $99 for a lifetime membership. I'm only accepting 100, and that's it. You get a link and your company name on my website, and you get mentioned on every podcast like today. So it's South Coast Clinical Trials, Sarah Elizabeth Siegler, Resolve Research Solutions, Accurate Clinical Trials, PTNR, Erdhart Clinical Research, Tradestone LLC, Breakthrough Clinical Trials, Kulkarni Law Firm, Biopharm Systems, Zymewire, Mozio, St. Paul Medical Research Center, Investigators Research Group, Phlebotomy Services, Atria Clinical Research Management, Rheumatic Clinical Disease Center, Clinexus Research LLC, and Coastal Connecticut Research LLC. And thank you guys all for watching. Stay tuned for next time. This is Dan Sfera from theclinicaltrials.guru. Take care.